The palace of Pharaoh stood tall and proud, shining under the Egyptian sun. Inside its golden halls stood Joseph, a man of God, a Hebrew who once wore chains in prison, now dressed in fine linen, second only to Pharaoh himself. Beside him stood a stunning woman in Egyptian robes. Her name was Asenath. She was the daughter of Potiphera, the high priest of On, one of Egypt's most powerful religious figures. She was born and raised in the heart of pagan Egypt, where gods were carved in stone and worshipped in temples. And yet this woman, Asenath, became Joseph's wife. Wait a minute. Joseph, the dreamer, the faithful servant of the God of Israel? Why would he marry a pagan woman from a land filled with idols? Did he forget his faith? Was this just a political move? Or could it be that there's more to Asenath's story than we've been told? This question has puzzled many Bible readers for generations. The Bible tells us very little about her. Just a few lines in Genesis, where Pharaoh gives Asenath to Joseph as his wife. But those few words open a door to a mystery, one that takes us deep into the heart of ancient Egypt and into the hidden stories passed down for centuries. In this video, we'll uncover the truth about Asenath. Who was she? Did she really worship idols? And what happened that made Joseph, a man of unshakable faith, accept her into his life? Was it love, duty, or something divine? Stay with us, because what you're about to discover might just change how you see Joseph and how God works through the most unexpected people. Let's step back in time, into the land of ancient Egypt, where towering temples reached toward the sun, and priests offered incense to gods made of stone and gold. It is here we find a young woman named Asenath. Asenath was the daughter of Potiphera, a powerful priest of On, also known as Heliopolis, one of the oldest and most important religious cities in Egypt. The people of On worshipped the sun god, Ra, and their priests held high status, second only to Pharaoh himself. Growing up in this world, Asenath would have been surrounded by idol worship, Egyptian gods, and temple rituals. She likely wore fine linen, spoke the Egyptian language, and followed the customs of the royal court. And yet this woman became the wife of Joseph, the Hebrew man who worshipped the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Genesis 41:45 tells us, Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, to be his wife. Just like that, their lives were joined. But who really was Asenath? Her name in Egyptian likely means something like belonging to Neith, an Egyptian goddess. But some scholars say her name could also carry hidden meanings. In Hebrew, some have tried to connect it to gift of the gods or gift of the Lord. Was this a clue that her story was more than just political? Asenath's name, background, and marriage stir up questions. Was she just a pagan bride given to Joseph? Or was she part of a larger plan that even Joseph couldn't see? Before Joseph met Asenath, he was a prisoner, sold into slavery by his jealous brothers, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, and forgotten in prison for years. Joseph's story seemed hopeless. But God had a different plan. One day, Pharaoh had a troubling dream. Cows, grain, famine, and no one could explain it. That's when someone remembered Joseph, the Hebrew who could interpret dreams. Joseph stood before Pharaoh, gave the interpretation, and offered a plan to save Egypt from the coming famine. Pharaoh was so impressed, he made Joseph second in command over all of Egypt. Imagine that. One day Joseph is in a prison cell. The next he's riding in a royal chariot, dressed in fine robes, with a signet ring on his hand. Pharaoh didn't stop there. He gave Joseph a new name, Zaphanath Paneah, a name that likely meant something like God speaks and he lives, though the exact meaning is debated. It was a way to make Joseph truly Egyptian in the eyes of the people. And then came Asenath. Pharaoh gave her to Joseph as a wife. It wasn't a romantic love story, it was politics. By marrying the daughter of a powerful Egyptian priest, Joseph was now tied to the religious and political elite of Egypt. It gave him credibility, influence, and security. But it also raises a deep question. Did Joseph even have a choice? Could he refuse a wife given by Pharaoh? Could he say no without risking his life or position? And if he accepted the marriage out of duty, was he still honoring God? This brings us to a tough question. Was Joseph unequally yoked by marrying Asenath? In the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, we see strong warnings about marrying outside the faith. God told the Israelites not to marry foreign women who worshipped other gods because it would lead them astray. Even Abraham was careful to find a wife for Isaac from his own people, not from the Canaanites. Later, Ezra and Nehemiah would even confront Israelites who had married foreign women. So did Joseph break this principle? On the surface, it looks like he did. Asenath was Egyptian, the daughter of a pagan priest, and likely raised in idol worship. But the Bible doesn't criticize Joseph for this marriage. In fact, God continued to bless him. His two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, became leaders of two tribes of Israel. Could it be that something more happened? Some ancient Jewish writings, like the book called Joseph and Asenath, tell a different side of the story. According to this story, Asenath rejected her idols, repented, and gave her life to the one true God before marrying Joseph. She even fasted and prayed for 7 days, throwing her pagan idols out the window. The story says she had a deep, personal transformation. Now, this book isn't part of the Bible, but it shows how early Jews wrestled with Asenath's story. They couldn't imagine Joseph marrying a woman who still served false gods, so they believed she must have converted. Even some rabbis taught that Asenath wasn't really an Egyptian at all, but secretly the daughter of Dinah, Jacob's daughter, and Shechem, raised in Egypt after a troubled past. This was a way to say, see, she was part of God's people all along. These traditions may not be fact, but they reveal something important. Faithful people struggled with this marriage. They asked hard questions. And instead of rejecting Joseph, they tried to understand how God might have worked through it. So was Joseph wrong? Did he compromise? Or did God bring Asenath into his life for a reason? Maybe the truth is that even in Egypt, even in a pagan temple, God can reach a heart and write a new story. Maybe, just maybe, Asenath's journey was one of redemption, and her marriage to Joseph was not a failure of faith, but a testimony to God's grace. There's a story that doesn't appear in the Bible, but it was told by ancient Jewish writers over 2,000 years ago. This story is found in a text called Joseph and Asenath, written around the 2nd century BC. Though not part of Scripture, it gives us a fascinating look into how people of faith tried to understand the mystery of Joseph's wife. In this story, Asenath is described as a young Egyptian woman who lived in a palace made of marble and gold. She was beautiful, noble, and deeply respected. But she worshipped the gods of Egypt, idols of wood and stone. When Pharaoh arranged her marriage to Joseph, something unexpected happened. Asenath saw Joseph from a distance, and something stirred in her heart. She realized there was something different about him, a purity, a presence, a holiness that made her feel ashamed of her false gods. So she went to her private chambers, locked herself away, and cried out to heaven. She fasted for 7 days, refused to eat or drink, and wept before God. She threw her idols out of her window and asked the God of Joseph to forgive her. She wanted to leave her old life behind. And then, according to the story, an angel appeared to her. The angel told her that her repentance was accepted and that she was now chosen by God to be Joseph's wife. This version of her story mirrors the journey of Ruth, another foreign woman who left her old gods and old ways to follow the God of Israel. Ruth said to Naomi, "Your people will be my people, and your God my God." Asenath too left behind the world she knew for the truth she discovered. Why would ancient writers create such a story? Many scholars believe it was a way to redeem Asenath's image. Joseph was a hero of faith. His wife couldn't be just a random pagan. So this story helps readers believe she was transformed, that she truly turned to God, just like Ruth, just like Rahab. Whether or not the events of Joseph and Asenath are historically true, the story reflects something powerful: the belief that God can reach anyone, no matter their background, and give them a new heart. Asenath and Joseph had two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Their birth is recorded in Genesis 41, 50-52. Manasseh was the firstborn, and Joseph said, "God has made me forget all my trouble." Ephraim was the second, and Joseph said, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." These two boys were born in Egypt, raised in a land full of foreign gods, yet their story didn't end there. Years later, when Joseph brought them to Jacob, his aged father, something surprising happened. Jacob blessed them as his own sons, giving them a special place in the family of Israel. In fact, they became the heads of two tribes of Israel, just like Reuben or Judah. That means half of Israel's tribes came from a mother who wasn't Hebrew by blood. In Genesis 48, Jacob crossed his hands and gave the greater blessing to the younger son, Ephraim, instead of the older. Joseph tried to correct him, but Jacob said, "I know, my son, Ephraim will become greater." From these two sons came thousands of descendants. They became part of the 12 tribes. They were leaders, warriors, and part of the promise given to Abraham. What does that tell us? It tells us that God's blessings are not limited by bloodlines. Even if their mother, Asenath, came from a pagan background, her sons were chosen and blessed. Their spiritual legacy mattered more than their physical ancestry. So many people today feel disqualified because of where they come from. But the story of Ephraim and Manasseh reminds us that God doesn't see as man sees. He sees the heart, the calling, and the purpose he has for each life. Asenath's story joins a long list of surprising names in the Bible, people who didn't belong, yet were used mightily by God. Think of Ruth, a Moabite woman who became the great-grandmother of King David. Think of Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute who hid the Israelite spies and was saved when Jericho fell. She became part of Jesus' family line. Think of Tamar, Bathsheba, and even Mary, each of them chosen, each with their own unique story. Asenath may not be mentioned much in the Bible, but her sons shaped the future of Israel. And if the ancient story of her conversion is true, she was more than just a political bride. She was a woman who turned her heart to God and raised two sons who carried his promise. Her story reminds us that God's plan goes beyond borders, culture, and past mistakes. In fact, God often chooses the unexpected person to show his power and grace. He doesn't only use those with the perfect background. He uses the broken, the outcast, the outsider. Because in the end, it's not about where you came from. It's about where God is taking you. Asenath is a symbol of redemption. Her life shows us that even in the heart of Egypt, even among idols and false gods, someone can be touched by the truth and changed forever. Joseph may not have chosen Asenath on his own. Pharaoh gave her to him. It may have been a political arrangement, a way to make Joseph's power stronger in Egypt. But perhaps behind the scenes, God was the one who chose her. Maybe God saw her heart. Maybe he knew what she could become. Maybe he knew that through her, 2 tribes of Israel would rise, tribes that would carry his promise into the future. Asenath's story is a powerful reminder that God can redeem any background. Whether someone grew up far from faith, deep in another culture, or lost in a world of idols, no one is beyond God's reach. Transformation is real, redemption is possible, and purpose can come from the most unexpected places. So now we ask you, what do you think? Do you believe Asenath truly converted and followed the God of Israel? Or was her marriage to Joseph simply political? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story touched you, like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the mysteries of the Bible. Because sometimes the stories we barely notice are the ones that hold the greatest truth.